what do you think quality data can do for us in ending violence against women and girls?
Well, many states in the world have ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. We call it CEDAW. And there is a committee that oversees how states are fulfilling their obligations under this treaty. And that's a committee for the elimination of discrimination against women says very clearly that states must collect disaggregated statistical data in order to measure violence against women. Why is this so important? Because without disaggregated data, you don't know where you stand. You don't know where the gaps are. You don't know if progress is being made or not. You cannot develop evidence-based policies, and you cannot track your progress and make adjustments to these policies if necessary.
Definitely.
So we have to invest in that, data collection. I think we have come a long way, but I think there's much more to do.
Definitely, there is much more to do. I'm a lawyer, and I really identify with the work of the UN Human Rights Office, but I would really like to know what you think about the links between human rights and development, and on the other hand, achieving, ending violence against women and girls. Can you draw any interconnections and linkages?
Well, I'm really happy that you believe in human rights, because we're also living in times where a lot of people think that human rights is no longer important. And as you know, human rights are not just civil and political rights, they're also economic, social, and cultural rights. And states, they have voluntarily signed up to a number of treaties. So that means that they are legally bound to implement some of these obligations that are in the treaties. Now, many of these human rights are captured in the Sustainable Development Goals. And actually, we did this flyer, which I'd like to show you, which maps how the Universal Declaration is connected to Sustainable Development Goals.
Great.
Here you see, for example, how they go together. These are the articles of the Universal Declaration, and then the others are the SDGs. Now, the SDGs do not replace human rights or the human rights agenda, and I would like to make that very clear from the outset. On the contrary, the SDGs are meant to accelerate the realization of human rights. And the Sustainable Development Agenda says very clearly that the SDGs have to be implemented in a manner that is consistent with states' human rights obligations. So they're not human rights and the SDGs, they're not two parallel agendas. They're totally intertwined. A fundamental principle of the SDGs, and I think that's also an important difference from the Millennium Development Goals, is the principle of leaving no one behind, and starting with the one most behind first. And as you know, the principle of equality and non-discrimination is also a pillar of the human rights agenda. So here, the SDGs and human rights come together very closely. What this means is that we need to dismantle inequality in society. And in the MDGs, one could realize a certain goal by investing only in the most prosperous group, for example. This is no longer possible. With the SDGs, the states have to make an investment in all the groups and in the ones that are most disadvantaged first. Now, I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight that there's a lot of development that is needed in Europe as well. People have a tendency, and because it was the MDGs did not apply to Europe, but the SDGs, the difference is that this is a universal agenda. There are many people left behind in Europe as well. Think again about the Roma communities. Think about the homeless people. Think about persons with disabilities. So I think it is important that as European leaders preach to the rest of the world about the SDGs, that they also make it happen at home. And we hear a lot about the role of the business community in supporting the realization of human rights. But I would like to say that as important as the business community are people like you, who belong to human rights organizations that are doing the work on the ground. Too often, they are not sufficiently visible. And what we're seeing actually in many parts of the world, including in Europe, the space for human rights defenders and people who stand up for human rights is becoming more and more restricted. Yet without the work of these grassroots organizations, human rights defenders, non-governmental organizations, we cannot know where the gaps are. We cannot get the information. So I think that instead of being afraid of human rights defenders, we should cherish them, we should celebrate them, we should be grateful for the work that they are doing. So coming back to the topic of our discussion, violence against women is really a barometer. If we manage to eradicate violence against women, I think that shows that we can overcome inequality as such. So thank you so much for
Wow,
this.
that was a brilliant response. Thank you very much. And I love how you emphasized that the SDGs do not replace human rights.
No.
They are supposed to accelerate the achievement of human rights for all. Thank you very much, Birgit.
One last thing. The image we often use for the SDGs is we say, well, of the SDGs, they're going to run until 2030. Human rights obligations, they're going to go on after that. So actually the SDGs are a very important benchmark. They are a milestone in the longer endeavor of realizing human rights for all.
Yes, thank you very much, Birgit.
Thank you.